You know the phrase that pays. Tank. Yes, yes, y'all. To the break, y'all. Yo, I see 3 smiling angelic countenances on your video scope. Smiles, everyone, smiles. Guys, welcome back to Pencil, your favorite weekly creative live cast brought to you by 3 Pitch Me, I Must Be Dreaming. Expert cartoonists. Let's do a round of introductions. I'm your first host. I wear many hats besides this one. It's starting to get cold, guys. I got to switch it out to the Scully. My name is JAMAR NICHOLAS. I am the 2nd vice president of the National Cartoon Society. That's got to stand for something. On top of those honors, I'm also the chapter chair of Philadelphia. Go Birds! And on top of that, we'll talk a little bit about the convention grind in a second. I also have a middle grade graphic novel series at Scholastic Graphics. Leon Extraordinary, yes, is in Steve's hands and also in your hearts. The newest book, Worst Friends Forever, is in stores now. This time next year, Leon #3 will be out. I'm so excited. I hope you will cop it. Why don't you?
And then you go Force Ghost.
Luke, go to the Dagobah system.
That's right.
JN, is that you? I would be remiss. I would be in remission if I did not introduce to you my co-host, and co-conspirator. He is the reigning, defending, and undisputed world heavyweight champion of webcomics. You know him in these streets as by God and Stone Cold Steve Conley. What's up, Steve Conley?
What happened to Melodic Twinkle?
Yeah.
Well, when he got the belt, he didn't need that anymore.
My twinkle's going unappreciated. Gentlemen, it is so lovely to see you. My name is Steve Conley. You may know me from your 34th favorite webcomic, The Middle Age, available over on Webtoons, Tapas, Go Comics. It's on Global Comics. It's on Fables. It's every place. It's also over on steveconley.com. I am a card-carrying member of the National Cartoonist Society. I'm also a big fan of Leon the Extraordinary. Cop it, why don't you go Birds? And can we just say how lovely this illustration is? It's not on the cover, but just how great that is. That's just a bonus. That's like a second cover.
Oh, so, you're too kind.
Gorgeous. But I would be in traction if I didn't introduce.
I'd be interacting. Yeah, go for it.
If I didn't introduce the Tower Power, the Man of the Hour, Too Sweet to Be Sour, everyone's favorite mark maker of merriment and mirth, the maestro, Mr. Mike Manley.
Ew.
Greetings and salutations, everyone.
Hello, sir.
My name is Mike Manley. I am a 41-year veteran of this here 4-color funny business.
No.
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 And I've probably drawn some of your childhood.
That's fantastic. And that never gets old, Mike. I gotta say.
Your childhood? No.
Well, no. It's funny.
12 forever, right?
It's funny because I've been reading a lot lately. That's before we went on air, Steve and I were talking about the majesty that is YouTube Premium. If I had to get rid of everything, every subscription I had, I would keep YouTube Premium. If you want to give me a sponsorship, I'm down with that. That stuff is mad important. I don't watch TV anymore. I really don't. I don't have YouTube.
Say that.
Yeah. Why?
Because I saw a really crazy statistic yesterday that the average amount of people watching a 3-hour span of CNN was like 80-something thousand people.
Not millions.
You think it would be millions of people watching, right? Even Fox News, right? And so they had this podcast I was watching on the YouTube was listing all these things that basically ties into what we've been sort of talking about, is that all the old media is going away and people are now watching network TV, and young people are never going to be watching network TV. Like, the younger you are, the more you're just watching everything on the tubes of
You.
you. Yeah, my niece, that's all they watch. And then they send, there's that interactive thing that if you see something you like, you can send it to your friend, right?
Yeah.
Which, they said that CBS News had the oldest audience of any broadcast news, and that most young people, and then young, you're probably talking about 40 now, right?
60 and younger, 60 and below.
Yeah. Right. That they get their news from social media. Right. They don't buy a newspaper.
Why would you?
I only know one young person in the past 30 years that got a newspaper.
They probably have a cat. They probably have a cat or a packing glasses.
No, well, yeah. They don't have any pets.
Have a bird cage.
Yeah, but and it's happening with comics too, because the younger set is reading Jamar's book or seeing your thing on your strip online, is not going into the comic book store. And if they do, the stuff that they're looking for, which would be influenced by the movies, the comics don't reflect the movies, right? The Miles Morales or even all the Marvel stuff doesn't reflect it. So there really is like this big changeover of all media, right? The whole thing, like MTV, it's going away now after 40 something years.
They're pulling the plug soon. I just read that.
Yeah. So, and I remember MTV came out 2 years after I was out of high school. I remember. And that was such a huge thing. It just so changed our world and people's visual perceptions of how you took information, how you watching those videos changed the way people absorb narratives.
Mm-hmm. Oh, right? Mike, I have a piece of that. Also, and I just watched some sort of MTV essay, and somebody was talking about how Kurt Loder, who did MTV News, was as important as Walter Cronkite to our generation. Like if Kurt Loder said it, then it must be real. Those are really important touch points, like Mike's talking about. I'm sorry.
And comics kind of surfed on that, right? The direct market kind of surfed on that and then really blew up in the 90s. And once we got to that peak, 94, 95, it just started doing this. So graphic novels are up. That's up. And people reading webcomic and anime and manga are up. But the regular, old school stuff is really taking it on the chin right now. So I think we will see a lot of people doing the Kickstarters. In fact, we have my Zoop thing that I'm part of is still active. The Monster Forge thing. I think we only have like maybe a week left, but that's whatever I see. Like I think with the New York show, there was a lot of people announcing Kickstarters that week. Did you guys notice that?
There's been a ton of them. Yeah, I definitely see that. And all the Zoops and the backer kits. Yeah, a ton of crowdfunding activity. It's in a big part, especially on the indie side, because of when we had Fabrice on, in the middle of that collapse, I guess ongoing collapse. The direct market, a place to distribute comic books, which around that time, Mike, really, it started in the 80s, but really kind of blossomed in that early 90s period, totally gave up on comics as a disposable medium and made it and truly embraced it as a collectible. Like you're buying a collectible. The book has to be mint. They have a person who's buying it has to hold it up to the light to make sure there's not a single crease on it. Can't have a bent corner. It's not like the comics that were folded up in your back pocket. It's almost every other form of medium is not. Every other form of media is not collectible. These books should be loved to death. They should be read again and again till the spine, the pages are falling out. The idea that we're creating, at least in comic books, trying to create an art form that people are meant to read in a format that you have to have white gloves on while you're turning the pages is crazy. It's crazy. And then you have to have prices that are commensurate with a collectible. So suddenly
no young person is going to pay.
Right. So it's a bizarre way of, the whole thing changed. And they couldn't undo it because the direct market, the comic book shops, had become dependent on that price tag. You can't fill up a wall of 10-cent books and hope to keep your lights on. You need them to be $5. You need them to be expensive.
So hold on, let's
Sorry for the rambling.
Let's intro the show here. And all of a sudden it seems like there's like triple the things on my desktop here. Wait, hold on, where is it?
You gotta have your glass screen with your
my Tony Stark.
You got your Minority Report over there. People don't even know what that is now. That's like
wow,
30 years old, right?
I feel like we're in Minority Report, guys. This is what we lovingly call shop talk. Oh, damn it! Shop talk.
Shop talk.
Shop talk.
It's what we call shop talk. God damn it.
Shop talk. God damn it. So this episode, we do not have a guest. If the numbers are low, because
you're my guest and Steve's my guest
in my heart. You might be like, "Yo, where's the the fourth dude?
Where's the important people?"
That's why I called it a long time ago. You're three expert cartoonists. When we have a guest, that's gravy. That's not what the show's about.
This is Stouffer's right here, buddy.
That's right. This is a heat. What do you call it? A hungry
man. That shit is hot.
The hungry man dinner with the foil.
That's right.
So what's going to happen tonight, you guys, is if you're watching live, thank you. We're going to hang out here and we're going to talk shop, and as only cartoonists can do. You can almost think of it as a fly on the wall episode where we're just going to talk our talk. If you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We'll try to address them. I was thinking about this when we were getting ready for the show, is that I don't want this show to feel too close to Ask the Cartoonist, right? Because Ask the Cartoonist is where you ask us stuff. Shop Talk is a little different than that. Does that make sense, Steve?
You asked the cartoonist about the shop talk, see?
Well, I just don't want it to seem like it's the same thing with a different title. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, but not
to be more focused, and Ask the Cartoonist is a little more AMA like. Yeah.
Right. So, anyway, to that, there are a couple of things going on, and I was trying to get some background ambiance going. And I don't know if it's going to hit yet, but we have just gone through the Con Gauntlet. The Con Gauntlet, and it's almost over. Baltimore Comic Con is this weekend. Well, actually, is it tomorrow, Steve? Is it starts on Thursday? It's Thursday.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Friday to Sunday. New York Comic Con was Wednesday to Sunday. And then what else did we have?
EEIC or EIEIO?
EIEIO Con? What are you talking about?
Isn't there one like around Turkey Day or something?
There might, I don't know. There might be. There's like something every weekend.
Yeah,
well, like Reed Pop and Galaxy Con have cons like every weekend somewhere. There's a con going.
Yeah, that's very true. It is super real, and kind of to the point I'm getting at. I wanted to kind of maybe do a small debriefing about not necessarily New York Comic Con, but riding in the exhibitors raft down this water. It's almost like tubing, where you're like at your butt, kind of hitting the rocks while you're like floating down the river of convention.
Try not to get eaten by piranha.
I don't want to get hit. Is that there's a consensus, you guys, that everybody is really tired right now. I said on my Patreon today, like, real rap, I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We're here, we're doing a thing, we're always moving mountains. but let's call it what it is. It's a long slog, and it's kind of like part of the system we're in. I know there are people who don't do shows. That's great. I know my matrix has changed over the years. If you've been paying attention, I do a smattering of comic book conventions now, but I do a lot of other education-based events like book fairs and ALA and other alphabet soup shows. But there's still things that I have to go to and be at and be present for. So yeah, so just I feel like it was like days ago, but it was. Last weekend was New York Comic Con, where everybody just flooded to New York to do the show. That show has changed a lot over the years, but one thing that I've been hearing, and I'm sure, Mike, you have had reports too, and Steve, you heard things. It seemed like everybody came out of it feeling like they had a good time. Now, I know last week we talked, or was it the week before, we talked about fun. Like nobody's really talking about fun. Like when you come back from 4 days in New York, or hell, even like 5 days in San Diego. Did you have fun? Is probably the last thing you want to hear when you put your suitcase down.
You're like fun as you pass out.
Yeah, you starfish out. So, but it seemed like if there was a couple of bullet points, it seems like I didn't really hear about the money part, because that's usually the first thing the pervs talk about. It was like, you know, I made half of what I made last year. Or, you know, the Prince of where it's at. Nobody wants comics, or you know, whatever the matrices of what people are selling are. But it seemed like people were having a good time just commiserating with other cartoonists. It seems like there's a lot of like hopeful communication between everybody. And I think that means something too. I mean, a lot of it is dollars and cents, but it seemed like people were like, oh, I met with so-and-so. I haven't seen so-and-so in so many years. This was great. Oh, we went to dinner. I had a great time. And maybe touching on that exhaustion thing, I think maybe there's a point where people are like, you know what, I just don't want to worry about all that other shit. I just want to have a crab cake and like a beer and just maybe like shut it off for a night or two. So maybe that's what I'm reading. I don't know, Steve, if that makes sense, or if you have another take on where people are with cons at this point.
I feel like that's about right. There's also the community, at least I'm the one I'm associated with, is getting a little bit older. I mean, I'm not going to be at Baltimore this weekend because of an injury. I think I would have sustained this if I was 25, not just because I'm 56. But I feel like, so there's getting older. There's also like Mike was saying about there being a convention every weekend. That's a lot. Having to be on all the time is another big deal. We talk about that. So there's constantly this kind of drain on people. And I tend to leave the best shows. I leave exhausted and energized. Right. Like I leave there going, oh man, that I am wiped. My voice is gone, but I'm so excited to get back to the table, get back to the drawing table and make more stuff. So I don't know. I'm not sure how much of it is new, or I didn't sense it. Like you're saying, I didn't sense a trend coming out of New York, out of reports of New York, like saying that it was good or bad. But I mean, I think people just.
I think it's expensive. That's the one thing I heard.
Yeah.
York,
if you're in New York, it's a great show.
Yeah, right. But it's very expensive. And the other thing is, every show is somebody's best show, and every show is somebody's worst show. That's always been true, right? Every year you would go to San Diego or Baltimore or whatever, and somebody, oh man, this is I did great, and then you hear somebody else go, fuck this show, this is bullshit. You know, I lost my shirt, and I think comic conventions are a little bit different than the average convention, because most conventions, when somebody goes to the tire convention or the dentist convention or the
duck decoy,
they're not going to the convention to make money. They're going to at the show. They're going to the convention to promote their product. So it's an expense for return later. Comic conventions for us are like, I'm going to go there. I'm going to spend, money on an airplane and a hotel and food and the table. And, it's pretty easy on any of the big shows to be, $1,500 in, easy, just to do the show. So you figure, well, if I'm not clearing 3, then, is that really working? And again, everybody's scale of success is different, right? For me, I think I've talked about this before. I tried to base I'd like to have a day rate. If I can make $300 a day, I'm doing okay. That would be $300 worth of like drawing something at a show, $300 worth of doing something here.
Yeah, that's $100. That's $100K a year.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was always my basis, and I usually hit that most years. A couple of years, I had a couple of rough years in there, but that's for me, right? Now you may be in your 20s and your overhead is lower. You may need more than that. You may be married and have 3 kids and 2 of them in college, and you're like $100,000 is like nothing, right?
Right.
So it really depends upon, a lot of people network. The shows used to be a networking thing for me, and I would always say that when I went to a show, I ended up getting extra work. Usually when I went to a show, I got a couple jobs out of it, just because like, hey, how you do? Oh yeah, we're looking for somebody to draw this issue, or you want to team up on something. That doesn't really happen now, I think, because of social media. So before social media, it was really true that you could go to a show and pick up work because you might see an editor or writer or somebody needs you to ink something. But now we can kind of all do that on Facebook or Instagram or Blue Sky. So again, it's the top end and the bottom end of comics, I think, is more extreme than it used to be. Right? There's more cartoonists. There are more cartoonists alive working or trying to get work than there have ever been in the history of cartooning. And I said this before, like you look as we're scrolling by, how many women are you seeing in this video?
A lot.
A lot. When I came in, you didn't see any women. You rarely saw a female cartoonist. For like every 30 guys, there would be like 1 female cartoonist. And that's really not the case now. And that's especially because of the influence of manga and anime. And what you really don't see here, which is weird when you watch I saw this earlier too, is you see everything here kind of all thrown together.
Mm-hmm.
Indie, weird, self-published people, and then, like Alex Ross or somebody, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it is a weird cross-section also because usually these things are very separated. Like there are many people that are fans of just this person here. They would never be a fan of
the person next to him.
Right. Yeah. They were like, huh. Yeah. It's like, that's the weird thing about when you're at a show is that, and I think that became increasingly so over the course of the last 20 years because, now you have webcomic people, right? Like Steve, that's what, 20 years old now? What'd you say, Steve? 20?
Web comics?
Yeah, 20?
It's older.
30? 25?
It'll be 30 and I launched mine in 98. So we're 3 years away from a 30-year.
Right. So, but when you first went to a con with your webcomic, probably a lot of the people didn't even know about it, right?
No, they didn't have internet access.
Right.
Oh shit! I lost it. Hold on a second.
Right. So now when you go, everybody's got internet access, So if they're going to be interested, they're already interested, right?
Yeah, I think Dean Haspiel says like, if you have a phone, I'm already in your pocket. You know what I mean? Like he's like he's got because his when his comic was on and still is on Webtoon, you know, if you got Webtoons, you already have his comic. That's a very different thing than back when people were looking on their cathode ray tube monitors and through dial-up.
Big giant monitor that you'd like
Uh-huh.
get a hernia lifting.
Yeah, the first iMac was technically portable, but it weighed like 45 pounds.
Right. Yeah.
It had a handle, but you know, good luck.
Hey, before this gets away from us, and this is a cool video. Shout out to Bada Boom Podcast who were taking this footage from. This is a walkthrough of New York Comic Con, which just happened. This is Artist Alley. This is not the whole show. So if you've never been to a big comic event like New York Comic Con, this is like the basement where the Artist Alley is
Where we deserve to be.
It's a wing of the convention. So down in it, you know, there's a point in time where Artist Alley was in a different location in the Javits Center in Manhattan, but now it's down in this basement. It looks a lot more lit than it has in the past. The last time I was there, which was like last year, I went down there and it looked like they had the lights at half mast. Like I don't know what was going. It was dim in there and it was hot. So now the way a big show like this is set up is that all over the Javits, I believe they've rented out the entire building, and that's rare for a lot of events. You might have a section or maybe just the bottom or a half. They have the whole thing rented out. The main floor is usually exhibiting, like exhibitors who are kind of like publishers. There's also a smattering of small press. So small press, and there's small press people in the Artist Alley. And I want to talk about this before we end this. Some people feel like it may be worth their exhibiting dollar to pay more to have a space upstairs, where it's basically the same thing, but it's a more confusing layout upstairs to hawk their stuff. And you're also competing with, you know, I don't know, Capcom is there with a giant TV screen and Street Fighter people playing. You know, there's a lot going on. Then there's kind of subsections of cattle chutes where it's just queues and aisles leading up to somebody's table where they sign stuff. Then there's the halls where people go to panels, and you know, and it gets bigger depending on where you are. Like San Diego Comic Con is like 5 times this size. So this,
I just more. I'm really wondering. I mean, San Diego maxed out their space, but I hear that the New York show has as many people going as, or more people than San Diego. So,
Eternity says New York Comic Con doesn't cover all the Javits. You know what? That's a surprise to me. I wasn't there. You were there this year. You would know. But you know, from what I've seen in the past, it was pretty much all taken up. But Eternity is saying that it hasn't been. Eternity, what parts, like how much, what's the percentage of the Javits you feel like they took up? So just to what Mike says, that's telling. But another thing I wanted to say real quick, just so people knew what they were looking at, because this looks really like, oh, is this what Comic-Con is? If you've never been to Comic-Con, no, this is Artist Alley. At some other shows that I've seen lately, things are broken into kind of subdivisions. So you wouldn't see the ice cream truck set up like we've seen, like almost like this print thing, like you'll see in a second. Like somebody's got a little window that they poke their head out of, like right here. That might be like a maker space section of like Rose City Comic Con. There's a whole aisle of just people who are set up like that, selling charms and little stickers and things like that. And then the artists, you know, the comic book people like Alex, shout out to Alex Soviet, have more of a flush area to themselves. But like we were saying earlier, it seems like all these people are kind of jammed in one space. Steve, do you want to maybe talk to kind of like how maybe the look of exhibiting has been changing over the past 10 years?
It has, like Mike's talked about the demographic evolution, which is welcome.
Right.
And this is a fantastic convention because this really feels like a microcosm of like everybody who's trying to sell stuff in comics right now. You might have seen some sections of it which were all the tablecloths and all the booth backdrops were the same. That's usually a representative of artists, and they'll bring in a large group of cartoonists and basically work with the convention center to get X number of tables and put their the guests they bring in are generally people who are high profile artists in the comic book space. And they'll all be corralled together, and they'll have the artists basically show up. The banners are provided by the representative. The tablecloths are provided by the representative. They're just showing up there with their art and a commission list. And that's one group that's like a huge island of people. And there's a couple of those, and you'll see that they'll have very consistent branding throughout all of them. And then you've got the kind of ice cream shop thing we're talking about, which is often like a checkered tablecloth. It has kind of a lot of them will have very festive, bright colors, and that's usually the kind of maker stuff that Jamar's talking about. You got indie creators, you've got the print wall people, people who who bring a ton of prints of various characters, all fan art. Is that's the general gist you were asking about those kind of groups?
Yeah, and just kind of like, we had said on a couple of shows prior about how at one point, nobody even had banners with their names on it. It was just people, with a pen sitting at a table. But you just see how like visually noisy the space at eye level is, right? It's everybody's building up.
Well, I remember when I started self-publishing, I went and I still have it in the basement. I bought a display like that you fold it out, and then you could buy the double sticky Velcro that you could stick on your art or whatever. You'd stick it on the wall, and it came in this big, looked like a giant plastic traveling case. And I would that's when I used to have my Jeep. So if I was driving, I could fold down the back seat and shove that in. Or like when I was going to San Diego, I would have to ship that thing all the way to San Diego, which was cost a fortune to ship. So then everybody went from doing that to the little things that fold up to about the size of a mailing tube that you stretch up your like these, so everybody started getting those, because otherwise you'd show up and there might be your name on the desk, on your table. No tablecloth if you didn't bring your tablecloth. Some shows had them, some shows didn't, because that would be an expense for the exhibitor to go like, oh, you want a table? Okay, here's your splintery ass old table. Oh, you want a tablecloth to go over your splintery ass old table? Okay, that's this price. And a lot of mid-sized cons did not want to spend the money to have that stinky ass blue tablecloths.
You have to pay for drapery.
Drapery, right? So like they wouldn't even have, like some would have the pipe and drape behind you with your name. Right. Some didn't have any of that. They would just have the thing on the table and your name. But now, everybody, it's really easy to get any kind of signage or display. It's actually a lot for your, one of the things I'm noticing, it's like, you really have to be very sort of specific about what you want, because there's so much clutter here, so much eye candy, that it would really actually be easy to go through there and miss somebody.
Sure.
Like, there's you were there? Yeah, I was there. Oh man, I didn't see you.
Yeah, there's so much competition for attention, and it's great to see this, because you can see. And one thing to take away from this is, don't assume that just because if a person doesn't necessarily have a crowd at that given moment, that could just be a lull. And it's not. I didn't take away a lesson that says, oh, this booth design isn't working. There's an ebb and flow to a lot of this, and to traffic patterns of people in a hallway. But it's great to look at these and figure out which one of these approaches might work for, you when you're going to sit up at your next convention. I've a ton of ideas looking at this event. And those retractable banners, those came around in like the mid-aughts.
Yeah.
There's some video of like the early Small Press Expo, not Small Press, excuse me, the Spirits of Independence tour in the 90s. And the convention hall, there's like no backdrops. There's a few of us who brought like foam core signs and easels, but it's real. It doesn't feel like this at all. It's like you're interrupting someone's meeting when you go into that room.
Another thing, and you can kind of see like the Trinity just mentioned that area with all the Scots banners are all like black with the same trade dress above them, and even these guys, like Steve said, are probably run by a manager who kind of sets all this stuff up. Visually, it looks really professional when everything matches, and it's easy to spot. But then there's kind of like the print wall, as we like to talk about all the time. Like really in this kind of system, nobody's wrong. I think there's some things that are interesting, just like the verticality. Oh, look, there's a little window, there's an ice cream window.
There's also a trade-off though, because if you get somebody that's going to do that for you, then they're taking part of your money.
Oh, well, that's a whole other thing. Yeah.
Right? So, well, that's something to consider, right?
Sure,
do you go on your own and you foot the full bill, but then it's all you? Or do you go in with a bunch of people?
Mm-hmm.
And also, when you go in with a bunch of people, there's probably bigger dogs and lesser dogs. So the bigger dogs are going to get more attention.
Right. Yeah.
Does that benefit you or does that not benefit you?
And this is essential sequential. They represent a lot of other guys, big names in the spinner rack.
Right. Yeah. So again, you have to ask yourself. I think some guys do it because like, I can just roll in and roll out. Right. I don't have to worry about the tax thing. Getting stuff, not getting stuff, getting the pipe and drip, getting an electric thing dropped there, getting the Wi-Fi, all the things that you might need or you want. Somebody else would do that. But let's say you cleared $1,500. Well, then they're going to probably take at least 25% of that, maybe. Mm-hmm. So does that work for you? See, there's all these other questions you have to ask yourself. Maybe it only works at a big show. Maybe it doesn't work at a medium-sized show.
Yeah, I love this. I love videos like this because back in the day, the recommendation would be before you did a comic show, because comic shows all have different flavors. They have different audiences because they're pulling from the locality. And they like the Pittsburgh Comic Con was very different than Heroes Con, for instance. The audiences were just versus SPX, very different. And the only real way to know that back in the day was to go there. And still, that's the best way, is to visit the convention and see what kind of show it is. Does your work, if you're considering being a vendor, if you're going as an attendee, that also helps. But if you're going to be a vendor, you're going to set up at one of these conventions, going and walking the hall really helps you know, is this show right for you? Is it worth the investment? But videos like this really help because you can say, okay, this person is doing something kind of analogous to what I'm doing, and they seem to have a crowd. Maybe I should go here. Maybe I should try it.
Well, somebody's getting interviewed. And again, kind of talking about the marathoning part of this. This isn't where I thought this conversation would go, but this is really thrilling to watch this walkthrough. And in a way, I'm tired looking at it.
That's what I told you earlier today. It just made me tired.
Yeah, my feet hurt looking at this video.
Yeah, it just made me tired.
That is worth noting too. There's no carpeting on this floor. You're on a concrete convention floor. So just that's something cartoonists don't think about when they go to set up at these events. Your feet are going to hurt. So
thinking about the loadout for something like New York Comic Con, because I've done Artist Alley a couple of times. I've split space in the small press area with a bunch of other cartoonists. Oh, Kristen, I want to have her on the show. It's all a little different up in the small press area. For the most part, everything is carpeted. This alley is, like Steve said, is torturous on your feet.
You have
I've
to
seen-
wait until the Batmobile leaves. Then you can exit. The carpet comes up and the Batmobile leaves. Then
Right.
General Lee leaves.
Is-
Then you can leave.
Or I don't know if you can even do this. Like part of the convention, you get like this giant PDF of stuff you can order, and this is generally for like exhibiting, like say at a trade show. I don't think Artist Alley you get any of these amenities. You have to order carpet. Carpet could be a couple extra $1,000. If you want a kind of like a standing table or like a high top or lighting or like Mike said, like electrical drop or any of that kind of stuff, that's also a cost. Also, there's some places where they won't let you on the floor trying to construct things that are over a certain height. Like say some of these really tall banners, if you're trying to attach something to the ceiling, that's when the union gets involved.
Right.
Or you can't be on the show floor with a drill. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of, there could be like city opposition.
It would actually be, in some cases, cheaper for you to go and buy something. I saw Kyle Baker doing this once, I think. He had a display at his table. This was San Diego years ago. And I think what he did is he went to Staples, bought something, used it for the show, and then he returned it.
I've heard that story from people who go to set up at San Diego. Like you could rent a table for the weekend for $500 or whatever it was, or they could just get there a day early and buy a $50 table from someplace and leave it.
Yeah. It would actually be cheaper to do that than to have because the guy in the back, the union guys, if they're bringing something to your table, it's like, hundreds of dollars for a little thing, it's
drayage costs. I'm like, I think that just means taking money out of my bank account.
Just put your wallet right here. We'll give it to you at the end of the show. It'll be a little lighter.
So like, all of this as we're talking about is just because we get questions like this all the time. Like, what should I bring to the show? What should I do? Blah, blah, blah.
I feel like I'm drunk. I feel like I'm wearing the eyes of a drunk stumbling down Artist Alley here.
Well, one thing I said to Mike when we were kind of viewing this earlier is that you can kind of also, this is a pet peeve of mine, you can also see sometimes the artists will look up from their table and look at this guy filming them and look really pissed off. Right? Because it's like, who are you and why are you filming me? It's there. I mean, I know you're in this area where it's public, and I think at some of these shows there's even little notices about being videotaped or recorded, like you're giving your permission for your image to be used, or that kind of stuff. But this is almost like a different type of fan who kind of walks by and just like records, sweeps all of your shit and just keeps moving. Like,
well, like the celebrities, I remember when I would go to some shows and I'd always take pictures. Some celebrities, if you were walking past and you were like, not taking a picture necessarily of them, but they put their hand up in front of their face.
Yeah.
I remember Burt Ward doing that.
Right.
Putting his hand up in front of his face.
Billy D. Williams does that too.
So some people don't. Some people don't like it, but it's like, it's just kind of in the case of a celebrity, I guess that's how they're making their money, So I can see that, because you don't want people. But I mean, at the same time, it's like people are going to take pictures of you anyway. So
okay, let me ask this question, Mike, because I've seen this happen at conventions. Like I had done some artwork that was I did a whole series of retro posters. I think at a San Diego at one point, and I remember I had it for like 2 years. It was connected to that comic I was doing, Bloop. But people would come up and they would take photographs, like really, like clear photographs of the thing. How do you feel about that?
I don't care because I don't own any of those characters.
Fair enough.
Right? I mean, it's the same way with the whole AI thing. If they took everything I ever did for Marvel and DC and they combed it and they used it, I have no legal standing because I don't own those characters. I physically own the artwork, but I do not own the intellectual property.
Right.
If it was my own stuff that they were doing, okay. But yeah, no, I don't have any problem with people taking photos of the stuff. You know, I sort of feel like the cat's out of the, you know, the cat's out of the barn. You know, it doesn't matter now. You know, it's just this fucking swirl like this. This is like this endless swirl of shit that goes before our eyes every day, just like this video. This fucking endless swirl and swirl and swirl and swirl. And so you think, you know, you come from a time where like, oh, this stuff was precious. None of this shit is precious anymore. None of it is precious. What you are doing is not precious in the way that it used to be, because it's just swept past, just like this, right? This is like the internet. This is what our lives are like today.
You're looking at a visual representation of the internet.
I don't know. I don't know. I feel like a person's going to find something at this convention, a book or something like that. It will be precious to them, don't you?
The experience is,
and the thing they take home, that book, that copy of Love and Capes they pick up, that copy of Leon. That's gonna. Right.
But 99.9% is this. Right? There will always be the person. That's what fans do. That's what fanatics do. They're fixated on the one thing. So they got their little list of people they want to get their stuff signed by. They want to get this thing, whatever. But 99% of what you see is this. It's like everybody scrolls every day on the internet. And then you see, oh, that's cool. Save, share. And I'm a super sharer. I share a lot of stuff across my socials every day, not just my stuff, but a lot of other people's stuff. But 99% of what I see, I do not download and I do not share.
Gotcha.
So wait a minute, hold on, Mike. So you're saying, and I feel like if I'm following you right, I think that number is really high, but you're saying for someone, okay, let's back up. For someone who just paid for a 4-day pass to go to Comic-Con, what are they there for? Like, would they even go, or to what you're saying, they might not even go downstairs.
Right.
The Artist Alley is what
they may not be there, but just for cosplay. They're not going to go to Artist Alley at all.
Well, it's interesting if you want to compare it to social media. Let's say, okay, we're sweeping horizontally through this, but this could be Instagram. You could be scrolling past a picture of a table, picture of a table, picture of a table. What makes you stop at one of them? What would make you?
Good question. Yeah.
You know,
I think that's different for everybody. I just think that in general, because look, this is YouTube, and there's like probably 20 other videos like this of the same thing on YouTube, right? Well, probably other videos, maybe even of this show from different, maybe not as long, or maybe different. What I'm saying is this is the way people consume things now. We mostly consume most of the stuff on the phone, most of the stuff not from TV, most of the stuff from on phone, then then YouTube, and you know, our generation is the older generation, so the things that are very precious to us were, you know, the physical object. So I think what's happening is that everything is just being pushed along. And so to me, this is a great visual example of where we are as a culture and artists within the culture, because I don't think, you know, images, comics, for the most part, are as precious, except for that small percentage of the comic fandom that is willing to spend the money to slab their comics, right? That's not the average fan. That's like a subset of fan. But if you watch young people and how they observe stuff, it's kind of like this. You just kind of, you know, what's your screen? This is like your screen time, right? Everybody's screen time. So I think, you know, if you observe your demographics, which I do on Instagram, It tells me where people come from, what their ages are. I can go look at what people looked at it, how many people liked it, how many people engaged with it, and how many people saved it. Right? So you can get a fairly deep dive just for your own curiosity. Like, well, what are people reacting to? Right? But this, we're just kind of scrolling. This is where visual entertainment, which comics is just a part of now, all comics, whether it's web comics or print comics, because a lot of people read stuff now online, right? So it's a subset of people that go into the shop weekly and buy comic books. It is not the largest audience of people who consume comics. It's a smaller and smaller percentage of people who consume comics. And, now the people who are coming in and getting hooked on comics are not necessarily getting hooked on comics at all in the way that we did, which was usually an impulse, right? Because past the 2000s, impulse buying of comic books greatly declined because of the rise of the internet, but also the decline of the newsstand. So the places that you could actually find a comic just because you're with your parents and like, oh, I'm going to go over here. Oh, look, some comics. I don't even know around here where I could, outside of a comic book store, I could actually go now within a 20-mile radius and find comic books that were not in a comic book store. So what I'm saying is, if you get attracted to this kind of stuff, it's probably on your phone, and your phone is like this video where things are constantly. It's just. I think you have to look at where our culture is visually and how most people absorb and appreciate stuff visually. 30 years ago, this stuff might have been each thing might have been a little bit more precious, just because stuff wasn't pushed at you as much. I think it's really easy to take any image, even one that you like, and you save for granted because there's immediately 10,000 more. And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking like, oh, we're like, how could you even absorb this? You might have a certain artist that you like or a certain genre or whatever, but it's like this to me is like, this is like my Instagram feed. It's just like an endless stream, and oh, that's pretty cool. Oh, I'll share that. Oh, I'll save that, And I don't think that we really think that way because that's not the way our brains were wired. Our brains were wired the old-fashioned way. But young people, the younger you are, your brain is wired like this.
I wanted to say a part of this, and I'm glad that the chat is activated and talking about what we're looking at and weighing in on the conversation. Also, it's really interesting to watch, not necessarily like looking for the comic book dirt sheets to report on what happens at these shows, because that's what usually happens the Monday morning quarterbacking. But more about, I'm kind of interested in what, not even the fandom, but like when you see videos of, Dragon Con or New York Comic Con, usually there are these kind of like high-end cosplay montages.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Where there's always like like the close up to the fade out of somebody playing Psylocke, and there's like 30 minutes of that. To what Mike is saying, those people aren't there for Artist Alley at all. They're there to take videos of the cosplayers or to see the spectacle of Comic-Con. Or you see, especially at San Diego, as you know, San Diego has those really giant stairs that people are always taking these amazing cosplay crowd shots at. People live for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yo, here's like 90 Wolverines. Let's take that picture. How was Comic-Con? Oh, it was amazing. How was Comic-Con? Oh, it was amazing. I stood next to the marina waiting to get in the Hall H for a whole day so I could see the panel of the Walking Dead actors. Comic-Con was amazing. You know what I mean? So it's almost like there's several hundred voices having the same conversation, but everybody's got a different thing they're focusing on. You know, but from us, from the cartoonist standpoint, we live here. This is what we're worried about. This is what's in our square.
Yeah, and if you don't do a panel, which I'm never a big fan of doing panels, you don't get to go to the panel because you're running your ice cream shop, so that people are coming up and you're trying to make your bank, so you don't, it was always hard if you did do a panel or whatever. And some people really like to do, I mean, that's their thing. They like to go and pontificate and do the panels. But it's like there's several, geek culture has several layers to it, where it used to just be like guys dragging boxes, finding old comics,
right,
getting somebody to draw your thing, draw a sketch, complete your 3 issues of Spider-Man that you don't have. That's not what the show is now. That those people are actually probably the smallest part of the show now. Because it used to be that when you went to the shows, it was a lot of people selling old comics.
The dealer room, yeah.
Yeah. The dealer room is not really a dealer room like in the way that it used to be. So
I think it's interesting because a lot of it has a lot to do with who you're trying to sell to. I mean, when I look at this, I think about like when I'm sitting behind a table, that there isn't that the odds are the person going by my table has never heard of the Middle Age. They've never heard of me. They don't know, I don't know what's brought them to my table. I like to think I had a cohesive design. Hey, there's David Peterson. I like to think there's a clear design that brought them over, or something about the art spoke to them. But I'm basically trying to get people from any walk of life, whether they're a cosplayer or they're there for a prose novelist, or they're there for, I don't know, the third extra in some Star Wars thing. I feel like the cool thing about this is similar to like you're saying about social media, Mike. It is a chance to get ourselves in front of people who have never seen us before. So I feel like I always feel very hopeful going to these things. Like it's a chance to meet a whole new bunch of people. I don't think it's ever. I think it's also because my work never really worked in the spinner rack world. I drew some issues of Star Trek and stuff like that, but I don't think the direct market ever really warmed to what I do. So it's interesting.
And then the other thing is, like I said before, when you're at one of those shows, because it's very expensive to go to a show, you have to maximize your earning potential. So if you're going to make your money back, that usually means that you're cranking out. I think I saw a bunch of sketches that Eric Larson had done, and he does a sketch. They're nice, right, but then some people do sketches like it looks like a printed comic. You know what I mean? The whole thing is just very. So, some guys do stuff with, I don't use Sharpies, right? Because I know what will happen with a Sharpie in 10 years. The sketch that somebody paid for, it'll be green and purple, or it'll bleed. But again, there's all kinds of different criteria. If you're a young artist, you're probably really trying to get you're trying to land some fish and trying to network. And if you're an older pro like me, you're relying upon the nostalgia factor of your fans to want to get stuff signed and CGC and maybe buy a page. Although I like I said before, I usually don't take my pages much now because I can sell them from here. I don't want to dog ear them up, traveling around. And most people are not going to go to a con, and probably, there's that subset of people that are the super spenders, art collectors. average person, if you're going to spend $200 on a nice con sketch,
Right.
they don't have the money to come in and buy, oh, I want to, spend $1,500 on this page. So again, it's like there's a lot of adjustables in all of this. And I just think that, to me, it was very obvious when I saw that this is just sort of like what our modern life is as an artist. You're just part of this thing that's flashing by people's eyes all day. And there's some people that really dig your stuff. They're going to be lifelong fans. But for the majority of people, you're that thing that goes by in the length it takes your finger to do that.
I will say one of the nice things about this, as social media has gotten worse, Artist Alley's gotten better. Or at least Artist Alley stayed the same, because social media kind of used to work like Artist Alley. When back in the day, there was a website called comiccon.com that Rick Veach and I started back in '98. And we had a table that was we had a booth situation. We had a page that was full of tables, fake tables, icons that would take you to the websites of people, cartoonists who had websites. The idea was trying to keep the energy of SPX and those events and bring it online in some way.
Yeah.
The idea is, now that the algorithms and all these social media platforms kind of hide anything that's promotional, or hide anything that hey, my book's for sale, so they want to hide that because they want you to pay for that.
Mm-hmm.
As social media has gotten worse as a self-promotion tool, Artist Alley's looking better, because if you go down that aisle in Artist Alley, you'll see that booth. It might be hidden behind a print wall, but it's not like the algorithm's hiding you. The decorator might have done you dirty and put you behind a pole, but it wasn't some algorithm that's actually going after you or punishing you for not posting your cat.
Although also all audiences are not the same. So there's a lot of people who would read stuff that's at SPX.
Yep.
They're not going to go to New York because that's not their thing. They're not interested in Twilight or Spider-Man or whatever. So there again, there's a lot of different layers. Like my assistant Liang does tons of shows. She didn't do New York, but she's doing more of the anime and the manga stuff, right? And so there's whole subgenres of that stuff too, right? And you don't really see that stuff in New York. I didn't really see a lot of that stuff in Artist Alley, right?
I saw some of it. There was one butts on things. I thought it was like a picture of a pineapple and it had a butt, which I feel like they're stepping on Kaz Witness's territory a little bit there. But they had a little crowd, so there were people out there who did have that kind of cutesy.
Like I don't mean Paco or whatever it is, or yeah.
I don't want that to be. I'm not trying to say anything negative about it, but that kind of there's a cute aesthetic.
Kawaii.
Yeah, right. Right.
That idea of there is some of that. If you go through the video, some of the ones that pop out to me are the ones that generally bright colors. It's very like pinks and teals, things like that. It's there's definitely an aesthetic to it, and tons of stickers of stuff like that. But it's not as much because clearly it's the trouble with New York is it's a very expensive show to do, so it's demanding a return on a very heavy investment.
Right. So you could actually, instead of doing the New York Comic Con, if you're going to spend that money, go actually do an anime con in New York.
Go buy a above ground pool.
Right. Because
or do 5 other conventions.
Right. Budget. Because I it's interesting for me to observe what she's done, because she's done regular Comic Cons and then she's done
like specialty shows,
just regular conventions like a Cherry Blossom convention and things like that, and she like killed at some of these shows. You would be happy if you would make that money at New York Comic Con.
Heck yeah.
but it was not even at all that, you know, there were nobody there dressed as Wolverine.
But that's getting what you're saying. That's kind of in some ways talking about what you're saying about how we used to, our parents had to drag us into the stationery store for the comics. You know, they were there to buy the newspaper or a pack of smokes or something like that. And we saw the spinner rack and our eyes lit up. So it was completely accidental in a lot of ways, the way we would stumble onto comics, pre-comic book shops and things like that. And the idea that having something like that where people can stumble onto your work in a way that's what I like about doing these gaming conventions as well. The people going to the gaming conventions aren't looking for graphic novels, but they find me there. And you know,
they stone you and you never return.
Well, can I tell you about what I did last weekend?
Please do.
So there were, you know, as it is the season, it is the season, Steve Conley. People want to know where you're at, right? Because almost like they kind of coined San Diego as nerd prom.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so you going to prom, or you going to, you know, you going to junior prom, New York Comic Con? And I was like, no, I'm not going, but I will be at the Kids Game Con Live convention in Pennsylvania. That's where I was. So kind of what we're talking about is there was an Oaks, PA. Shout out to the Expo Center in Oaks with free parking, Mike Manley. That's a game changer right there. Just being able to pull up and just walk in with your stuff and not pay out the nose for your parking spot. But this was a convention, and I've been to a lot of like alt conventions where this was focused entirely on families. Right, where if your kid's into gaming and whose kid isn't, come here, and there's video games, and there's like, you know, there's you can meet your favorite, there's no clowns, right? Favorite YouTubers and all that kind of stuff. And there was an artist alley, because, and somebody said this to me, which made a lot of sense. It's like, say if you're the mom and you're dragging your kids to this thing because you don't really give a damn about Fortnite or Roblox, but you walk past this alley with people selling books. Come on in here and let's get you some books to take home. So then we're eliminating 85% of the competition by not being at New York Comic Con. They come right to us. So that's again what we've been talking about, is figuring out what your mix is, and like knowing, like, are you going to be one of those salty people who's on Facebook complaining that they got shut out of the Artist Alley raffle? So you can then go give them $550 and then an extra $3,000 to survive in New York City for 4 days.
Salty.
Right.
Salty.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm not saying there's anything evil about that. That's just the game. You know, but like, do you know what game you should be playing at this point in your career? And that's kind of what we've been talking about. I said this 10 years ago. And you remember this, Steve? I said, you know what? I'm going to start like creeping my way out of comic conventions, and I'm going to go to where I gotta be careful how I say things. Go to where the kids are. That's not what I mean, but I'm going to start.
Hey, kids!
Don't even give the algorithm the idea. Right?
Don't say creep.
I'm going to ALA. I made a big deal about ALA. I conquered that, and we did that last summer. We're going to ALA. I'm going to all these alphabet soup things. I'm going to book festivals. I was at the Baltimore Book Festival. I was at the Collingswood, New Jersey Book Festival. Had a wonderful time, where people who actually know my stuff and are looking for it, rather than me having to like fight dragons with like 5,000 other people in Michael Golden in Artist Alley. You know what I'm saying? So this is kind of what I'm saying. And I think there's room for everybody. It's not pie. You figure out where your thing works and you go to that pasture. But it doesn't necessarily have to be at these giant shows. So
when you're doing these other events, are you bringing your banner? Are you bringing a stack of books? Are you treating it like you had back in your Artist Alley days of yore, or are you like, because you're in that scholastic stratosphere now? Are you there? Do you just have you on a throne like looking down and just signing?
All right, let me say this, because also when people ask me about New York Comic Con, and I'm talking specifically about me. At this point in my career, I'm kissing 30 years at this point, is that, you know, where I am with my traditional book career at this point, I am going to New York Comic Con because I was invited to go on the main floor where the Scholastic monolith is with Leon on it, which is really cool to see every time I see it. Sign stuff for an hour, and then I'm done.
Right.
And then I'll go see my friends in Artist Alley, and all that's fantastic. That's what I am doing. I can't speak for everyone else, but I still mix it up. At this kids game con thing last weekend, I was there with my Kids of Comics crew. We set up. I have my banner, still have the banner, still have books, still almost cleared the table. And I had a wonderful lo-fi weekend.
Wow.
Right. And I drove 35 minutes home every night.
That's a win. That's a win right there.
You know what I'm saying?
No, $15 Nathan's hot dog. Come on.
It's I know people like to travel and it's fun to see other cities. It's also so good to sleep in your own bed.
Right. You know, and you know, I just want to make sure, like, I'm not trying to put on airs or anything, but as we've been saying for the 5 or 6 years of this show, that you have to be in control of your own career. And at some point,
also pay attention to the environment.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, I'm big on. I was just talking to somebody the other day about this. You know, you're like an animal, right? And when it gets cold, if your fur is thin, you freeze to death. Or, you know, if you got too much fur and it's hot, you die that way. And, you know, there's micro environments and then there's big environments, right? There's like your local environment. And we usually don't think of ourselves as artists in that way, except in hindsight.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the main thing you have to do as an artist today, especially today, is you have to really pay attention to the macro and the micro, because things are changing rapidly. And, you know, when you're an artist, you spend most of your time like right here, focused right here, working on treating your work. And you're not aware of this, but this can change overnight. And as I was explaining talking to somebody the other day, you know, for the first 2/3 of my career, almost, everything was pretty much the same. Things didn't really change that much. They changed when, you know, the computer came in, and that changed things. But there was also changing in a way that I can see in hindsight now that I wasn't quite aware of at the time. That publishing as a whole, when I got into it in the 80s, was already rapidly changing. Publishing as a whole was changing. And, you know, looking back now, I can see like, wow, yeah, in the 80s, it had already really changed from like the 70s and in the 60s. You weren't aware of it because you're on that piece of ice that's moving. But when you get further down the road, you compare that to what came before. And I think it's really important for artists to be aware of all of these things that are going on with, you know, of course, we're all obsessed right now with AI. But you know what? In 5 years, it won't be AI. It'll be some other thing that nobody's talking about now that everybody will be obsessed about. You have to be responsible, open, smart, and take this stuff in and pay attention to where your career is, where you want your career to go, and what are the forces that are going to affect that you have absolutely no control over. You have no control over what Comcast does. You can either cancel it or switch to somebody else or go to satellite. A lot of this big stuff that's happening now is going to radically change things for any visual artist. And it happens faster and faster and faster. If you are a newspaper strip cartoonist, we all pretty much draw the same way that Charles Schultz drew, who drew the same way as, somebody was drawing in the 1930s, Cigar or somebody, right? Pretty much. There's a little changes, but pretty much. But the environment of the comic, how it's perceived, how it's delivered, everything is so radically different because the audiences were bunched into much bigger, simpler, like, areas. And now all this stuff is constantly, everybody runs over your Blue Sky, then everybody runs over to Snapchat, then everybody runs over here, everybody runs over to TikTok, and so you don't have one big area where pretty much everybody is all the time. So that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. You see it in an artificial environment of a convention because it's all squished into that convention hall for 3 or 4 days, right? Every permutation of comics and entertainment and geek culture is all squished together, right? But the environment for all of it is different, and it can rapidly change in ways that we can't predict. If AI keeps going, the amount of AI slop that I see on my feed in the last week or 10 days since Sora 2 came out, it's just fucking insane. It is crazy. I saw a Peanuts thing tonight with Charlie Brown walking. It was horrible, but just the amount of stuff that I've seen, that's going to affect us in ways that we can't even necessarily predict now because it'll just become so normal, right? It just becomes so normal. It's everywhere. It's all over YouTube, all the stuff. It really affects people who draw things manually, by yourself. If there's all these things out there that's making stuff that people like, they can just crank it out in a second with 3 prompts. So that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. That's all existing also in the con at the same time.
Oh, we actually have a question. So I want to give this a moment, and it's funny how this whole show turned into Comic-Con, but it's been a really interesting conversation. So our buddy Christophe, bonjour mon ami. Christophe says, did you guys start going to shows as vendors by yourself, or did you buddy up or have a support network to show you the ropes? Now, I think what's really cool about your 3 expert cartoons is that all of us have different entrance points into this business. And I will say that I started off very solo. There was no network, right? He kind of came in my rookie year. I just came in with, one of my buddies and my girlfriend, and we drove to SPX after I missed it the year before because I was too late because I just found out about it and it was too close. It was closed with my 1 comic and way too many T-shirts. I had a lot of merch.
You still have those T-shirts? Are you still wearing them 5 deep in the winter?
No, luckily I sold them off, but I learned a lot just through the fog of war of going to a show and just not knowing what's going to happen. And the second we left that thing, I'm making plans for the next one and how I can improve. And I know I got to have something new every year. That was another big thing. I can't show up with the same thing because these same people are going to come back again and go, where's the next one? SPX was a where's the new thing crap. So that was kind of how I started. What about you, Steve?
I had gone to a couple of conventions. I grew up on Long Island, New York. So I had gone to a couple of creation conventions and a couple of New York Comic Cons before they were this New York Comic Con. The New York Comic Con name kind of went languished for a few years, was snapped up. But I'd been to a few conventions in the city. And so I was familiar with the concept. So I knew that before I set one up. And then when I started self-publishing in 94, that was just when the Spirits of Independence thing that Dave Sim and James Owen and Paul Pope and Steve Bissett and Rick Veitch and all those guys were throwing this it was a national tour of independent comic and of cartoonists. So they'd partner with a local comic shop and they'd rent out the Holiday Inn and have like a one-day event somewhere like in Burlington, Vermont, or in Austin, Texas. And we would just show up there. And we didn't have retractable banners. We had our books.
Doesn't exist yet. The retractable banners.
Oh no! It was like, I think I had a foam core sign, and I think that felt high tech at the time.
Yeah.
And that was it. And I was on my own. I just flew up to these events. I was working in newspapers at the time, so I had a little bit of scratch. I was a employee, so I was able to take a day off. I'm gonna take a day off. Can you imagine that, Mike? Your boss take a day off.
My boss is mean. He never lets me take a day off.
My boss sucks. Yeah.
So I used my vacation time, which was a thing then, and I would do these conventions and kind of on my own, and just that's where it all started in '94 with a terrible comic called Avant Garde.
Oh my goodness! Now, Mike, your entrance point was a little different from ours. Or did you ever sit down with like your zines or anything like that before you got into mainstream comics?
No, I mean, I went to cons as a starting, around probably 75. But when I think my first convention behind the table was probably, I want to say 84. I'm trying to remember exactly which one. I know there was a table, a show I did in New Jersey, and I met Steve Rude. It was right when Nexus was first coming out.
Cool.
And so I that might have been the first one where I was behind the table.
And that had to have been an interesting experience because you were there to you were there to sign people's books, right? You weren't really promoting stuff.
I mean, that was very early. Like my first comic was Robotech Defenders for DC. My second one was Transformers, right? And then I jumped around and did different things from 84 until 87, 88. I jumped around because I did do comics, but then I also did a lot of activity books and kids books and stuff. And then starting in I did CONLEY and the King. Then I left that and I was doing a bunch of kids books. I worked on Evangeline and worked on John Sable. And then I started inking Alpha Flight was my first solo regular book at inking it at Marvel. And so so I was doing shows, but again, they were smaller. I did do the shows in New York at the ones that were across from Madison Square Garden at the Pennsylvania.
Sure.
Yeah, I did those.
Steve is cheesing. He remembers those.
Yeah, and it was much more low key. Again, it was more like the shows that I went to as a kid. They were bigger, but you didn't have the media aspect to it that you have now. I mean, even if Marvel or DC were there, you know, you didn't have these booths with TV displays and all this. You know, Hollywood didn't give a fuck about comics back then, right? I mean, it was not like what it is now. I mean, geek culture was still on the rise. It was not the preeminent culture of the mainstream,
right.
which is what it is, you know, what it is now. So yeah, it was very different, you know. And you pay, you get your table, you truck your shit up, you'd haul it to your thing. I never had a backdrop or anything. I just had a sign that had my name on it, and that was it. And you sat there and you drew, and that was kind of it. You didn't even have you didn't have all the super crazy lines, or, you know. And then I didn't do my first San Diego until the year I did Batman, 94.
Wow.
And then when I started self-publishing in 96, I started doing it. And that's when we inherited my agent's old booth. And then I had all my buddies who were doing the Action Planet stuff. Everybody started sharing. Everybody sort of bought in. So we got this big booth on the floor. And I did that for several years. But eventually, one year I didn't go back. And, you know, in that case, if you don't get the table for the next year, you're gone, and you will never get that table ever again.
That closes up real tight.
It closes up really, really, really tight. But again, you know, things were, you know, if I was 3 or 4 years earlier with self-publishing, things might have been different. Because by the time I started self-publishing, the boom was over, right? And the comics were actually in decline, even though people would literally kill to have the numbers from 1996. Everybody would kill to have those numbers now. But already by 1996, you know, it wasn't too long until, well, that's when Capital City blew a tire. And when they blew a tire and they went out of business, it took a lot of comic book stores. And that really affected everybody's numbers, especially it seemed, for some reason to me, a lot of the independent people like me really suffered more when Capital City went, because not as many people who were Diamond customers were buying the independent stuff.
100%. 100%.
You know, so again, that ties into what I was saying before. There's all these things that happen in the big environment. You're sitting here, you're just trying to draw your comic, you're trying to make your comic interesting. You're not thinking like, oh, this distributor is going to go belly up.
Right.
And half the people who order my book are going to be out of business Monday morning, and my numbers are never going to recover.
Right. Marvel's going to suddenly leave the distribution system, buy a distributor, and start self-distributing, and suddenly you're like, oh, that's the end of me.
Right. Yeah. And so again, as a professional trying to navigate the waters, you know, you have to pay attention, sometimes more to that even than it seems, especially if you're independent, I would say, more than if you're trying to be a mainstream guy at Marvel and DC, because they're the ones that are handling that, right? You're just trying to make sure that you get a good book, it's popular, you get along with people, so you can continue to you can flex stylistically enough to continue to be able to dance,
right?
You know, and again, no one can ever really predict what book is going to be a hit, when book is not going to be a hit, because if everybody could predict hits, then every book would be a hit, right? But when I look back at my career now, I can see things like that. I had no idea that when Capital City went, that was going to basically kill Action Planet. As far as me being a publisher, I did then use that flex to go into animation, and I did use that experience to eventually do the magazine in my DVD, my how-to DVD. Again, a little bit ahead of the curve,
Yeah.
He said DVD. That
Right,
sounds
exactly, right?
That
Do you want
sounds
to tell people
awful.
what a DVD is, Mike?
You know, so again, you know, in hindsight, and I was a business-minded person, right? But again, had no idea that what could happen with, just like we're seeing what's happening right now with Diamond. Diamond going under is going to kill a ton of independent publishers.
Right.
Right.
I mean, publishers like Fabrice just, doing his thing, and then, the rug gets pulled out from under him.
Right. Right. And the thing is that what you're dealing with is human beings who get used to having a certain type of system, retailers having a certain type of system. So they didn't have to, creatures of habit. I can sit down on Friday or whatever day and I can plug all my numbers in, send my thing out, like books come in, Wednesday, put them up, done. Right now you're going to like, wait a minute, now I got to order from this guy. And what is my percentage? How many books I got to order to get this kind of a percentage deal or whatever? We come from a business that nobody had to do that, and most people don't like to do it, right? And that again is something that's outside of the environment of your drawing studio that can completely affect whether your book is going to be able to be published in the way that you intended and reach the audience that you hope to.
Right. 100%.
And again, when you're 15, 16, 17 in your bedroom and you're practicing and you're drawing and you're making your samples.
That's what I was doing. That's what I was doing, Mike.
Yeah. You were like, oh, I need but you really see how that's like super important if you're dealing with print. Right. If you want your book to be in print and you wanted to go to comic book stores, if that's your thing, then that's something that one way or the other, you're actually going to end up dealing with. Right. Now, if you just want to do web comics, which, I encourage every young person, just do web comics. Don't even worry about print. What you need to do is get your stuff in front of people's eyeballs so they want to see it. And if they want to see it, opportunity will come out of the fact that they like the fact that they see your work and they like it. Right? Then out of that, maybe you can work on doing the print thing, because print, honestly, it's very problematic now. It is really problematic, and it's not going to probably ever be stable again at this point, I don't think, because if in order for it to be stabilized, the big companies like Disney would have to be willing to invest millions of dollars to make it stable. Everybody else is sort of like trying to patch the wall, Okay, well, we'll get these 10 small companies together to try to do something. And then, Marvel's going to do their thing. And, Warner Brothers is going to do their thing. It's just like newspapers. I do 2 newspaper strips. That's how I make my living now. That's my thing. But newspapers are a dying business. They're never going to come back. They're never going to grow, which means that my syndicate is in a situation where they're never going to have more customers.
Right.
They're never going to suddenly be 15 more newspapers are going to want Judge Parker, or 30 more newspapers that want the Phantom. It's just not going to happen. So they have to figure out a way to find overseas customers or people who want to do reprints or whatever. And I have no control over that. Right? That's not something that I can do. That's something that they can do. And what they can do or are allowed to do or have the budget to do also has to do with what Hearst, the parent corporation, decides they want to do. Do they want to buy another newspaper? I think they just bought like the Houston Chronicle, or do they want to do that? Or they're like, no, we're getting rid of, we're cutting all this stuff down, and we're gonna sell Hearst to somebody else. That's like a lot of people think that eventually what's going to happen with with Disney is that Iger is trying to tighten the ship up to sell them to Apple. And if Apple buys Disney, well, what does that do to Marvel? Right? And what happens to Marvel really affects the comic book stores. Because if all the comic book stores suddenly didn't get Spider-Man or X-Men or Wolverine, that's going to put a lot of people out of business. They couldn't go with losing that.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you're sitting here, you're drawing, you're trying to get the elbow right or get the character the way you want. You're dealing with these meat and potato issues as a cartoonist. Meanwhile, is it spring outside? Is it a tornado outside? All these big things really affect you. Some little thing today could be a big, huge thing tomorrow,
Right.
And I really try to, whenever I talk to a young cartoonist, I always try to really stress that because, you're really obsessed when you're young and just trying to get a regular job, trying to get your dream job. But then you don't really think about like, oh shit, what if my dream job is killed Monday morning in a board meeting?
Right.
That's pretty deep.
I mean, I've lived it.
Yeah.
Right. I've lived. I mean, the Marvel implosion. Right. My career might be slightly different today if Marvel had not gone bankrupt.
Right. Right.
And when Marvel went bankrupt and they fired all the people I worked with, that affected my career.
Right.
Because all those people are the people to call me on the phone and go, hey, Mike, you want to do this thing? Or, hey, Mike, you want to do that thing? Right. If that person doesn't have the job at the company anymore, oh, you can still see him at a show. You still, talk to him over Zoom or whatever. But again, these are the kind of things that happen more often now in the last 10 years, 15 years than they did in the first 30 years. So I think people have to look at that because it's also, like I say, always based on your personality. Not everybody wants to work for Marvel or draw Spider-Man, right? Some people want to do their own thing. They want to do a Leon or they want to do a Ninja Turtles or they want to do a webcomic like Steve, right? And then you have to look at, well, what's affecting that? What if Webtoons tomorrow just pulled a dick move? How much would that fuck with webcomics right now?
A little. It depends. The ones who don't have the cartoonists who don't have a mailing list, the cartoonists who don't. I mean, they've done that in the past. They had better deals early on for the ones who were being paid, and then those deals got less good over time. So yeah, I mean, there was a Tapas at one point rolled out a new terms of service, and every time they roll out a new terms of service, it's never good news. It's never been like, oh, this is so much better. They rolled out a new terms of service which is much more grabby for the rights, and so people just left it. Then they pulled back. They rescinded the change, made it so it wasn't like they get the rights to your stuff, and people started coming back. But I pulled my comic immediately and lost them, and my audience has never grown to the size it was before that. So they can do the stuff that all the people who built their Friendster audience or their Twitter audience and have decided to delete their accounts.
Okay, well, that's okay. So that's exactly what I'm talking about. That's a very important thing. So you had an audience. They pulled a dick move. You pulled your comic. When you went back, your momentum was not what it was before.
Yeah, not with that site, but there's other sites, and that's what it is. To me, it's always like they're all going to go away, every single one of them. But currently, the thing is, you got to have a YouTube channel. You got to have that. You got to have a Twitter. You got to have a TikTok. You gotta, and then at some point, it's going to be
TikTok, Steve.
You got to have a dirigible account because if you don't have your dirigible account, you're screwed, right?
You know, I mean, I have a Blue Sky, which is the nicest site, but I think because there's not a bunch of assholes on it, it has the least amount of traffic.
My Vine
assholes generate traffic. That's my theory.
My Vine audience is huge.
But, yeah, I heard you had a huge Vine. Yeah.
Ew. All right, you guys. That's
but again, see, every venue, every environment has that, right? So if I saw Tom said, you know, Webtoons did the dick move. If Webtoons became the Amazon, you know, look, everybody thinks that they're assholes.
Sort of the comicsology.
Right. So then the stream is split and the fleet disbands, right? And they have to go and find some other thing and start over again. Because the one thing about a place like a Webtoons is it's got a big gravitational pull to anyone who wants to read webcomics. If you fracture that, then you have 10, 12 other things. Will you ever be able to equate the amount of viewers using 10 other sites that the original site had?
Well, one of the things that recently, it's not about having as many. It's about having. It's not having the biggest audience. It's having the best audience. It's about having. You're better off with 1,000 people who love what you do than 1 million people who are sort of acquainted with it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you want high quality. You want a high quality audience, no matter what its size is.
So how did you learn that?
Just I never put my like to paraphrase Tom, I never put all my eggs in one particular basket. When I was self-publishing Astounding Space Thrills in 1998, I was also doing a webcomic, and they were two totally different things. The webcomic wasn't just a reprint of the comic, and the comic wasn't a reprint of the webcomic. Those were two totally different stories featuring the same characters on two different tracks. And it's like, because, you know, I knew that the only chance anyone would see my stuff in the direct market is if a retailer took a chance on pre-ordering my books instead of yours, Mike. And I think their money was better spent if they pre-ordered yours. They're more likely to sell your work they're more likely to sell a Batman book by Mike Manley than some guy they've never heard of. And my book probably cost $1 more than yours just because of the economics of scale.
Right.
There's a lot going on there. Whereas the webcomic, I could introduce myself to a whole bunch of people. And it's always trying to. Someone in chat also mentioned that the Dollar Trees have like DC Comics in there. First of all, Dollar Trees, who knows what the price tag? It'd be $5. You don't know what a Dollar Tree is.
Yeah, right. A Dollar Tree is just a generic name now. Yeah.
So, but the idea is that they're another place where someone can stumble onto them. The idea is I want to put my comics everywhere someone can stumble onto them, and maybe they'll like it. You know, I mean, I hope to get Ziggy numbers one day, Mike.
Well, if we all could get Ziggy numbers, we'd be in a better place.
Ziggy, poor Ziggy. He don't even know he got numbers. He's so depressed. He doesn't even know he has numbers.
If I get Lockhorn's numbers, I will be very happy.
You want Andy Cap numbers.
So yeah, I think this was a very successful episode. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us.
People wondering what the hell are these guys talking about?
This is shop talk. And you know, the chat was pretty quiet, but they were listening, right? And I think one of the coolest parts
they were drinking Drano.
One of the cool takeaways of doing this every week is that I want to hope that at some point people have kind of figure, oh, Mike has a history of this, and Steve does that, and Jamar does that. I get it. How can I apply these, almost 90 years of experience in the comic book field to what I want to do or what I'm doing, or what kind of takeaways can I get from it? And I'm glad that when we can take a respite once in a while and just sit back and kind of talk about what's going on around us, what's floating in the water that we're also swimming in. I'm really happy, Steve, that you showed us that footage earlier. That YouTube clip was fantastic, and what a great backdrop. So
shout out to them again.
Shout out the Bada Boom podcast for us just pilfering their footage.
Are they doing that live?
No, they recorded videos, and they have a soundtrack behind it, and they recorded the convention every floor of the convention. Check out their YouTube channel. They did the artist alley. They did the whole convention floor. So and it's a bunch of separate videos. Excellent. Well done. So
Yeah.
Bada boom.
You're sort of like the Kirby character, the recorder, sitting there with your hands on the buttons of your chest, just recording everything as you.
Right, but kind of what I was saying earlier is like I personally would feel a lot better if somebody was behind that guy holding up a sign saying we're recording this for Bada Boom Studios. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
But then people wouldn't be on their natural behavior.
What, being annoyed when the camera goes by?
Hey,
even
no, you want
better.
to see the animals in their natural environment. You don't want to see the
change
lion comb his hair. Like, wait a minute. You know, yeah. So every time I would go by Steve's table, he's always like that. No, Mike, no.
Yeah, man. I don't know. I don't like it. No, sir, didn't like it.
Why?
So,
you were afraid to get you picking your nose? Like,
no, man. It's just I know I'm in public, and we as professionals try to carry ourselves to a certain standard in public. But
all they're going to see is this because I'm like drawing. All they're going to see is this shine.
I just like you could ask. That's all, in whatever fashion that looks like. You know what I'm saying? And how many times have you guys been at a thing and get interviewed by some dude who has no business card, who doesn't even tell you the name of the thing he's interviewing you for?
You know,
that's me. I'm just saying, like, yo, do you have a card?
I don't care. You know, if he wants to go home and masturbate to Mike Manley drawing, that's fine with me. You know.
Hey, that's all you, bro. All right, let's
his hot dark hawk rocks off. Hey, you know,
Dark Hawk After Dark.
That's right.
.net. All right, that's enough. Pencils down. All right, you guys, pencils down. We did it. Thank you guys so much. Also, I had to give a shout out to Raina Telgemeier and Scott McLeod. What a great conversation we had last week. It's crazy that we're already here at another week, but you know, I'm so happy for my buddies who are doing giant things, as I like to say all the time, who are moving mountains. And I will apply that to all of us. All of you guys are doing great things in the world. Keep it up. And I'm glad that we can be your shepherds in this pasture. A couple of notes on our way out the door. We have a fantastic guest next week. I don't have a graphic yet. But Misako Rocks are one of my favorite Japanese American living mangaka will be with us today next week. Misako is fantastic, and she has several manga series that she's done, and she's also a fantastic educator. So we're going to learn a lot about teaching kids manga and about drawing for a larger audience and kind of living inside and outside of the system. If you want to check her out, you can check out her Insta, and she's got a great website too. She'll be here next week. Thank you. And also, Coffee Break with JN will be here tomorrow night. You know what's up. 9 p.m. tomorrow, same bad channel. You get to watch me drink a cup of coffee and run my mouth. And when I'm out of coffee, video over.
What about when you're out of mouth, but you still?
I never run out of mouth, Mike Bailey. You know that. You know, I talk forever, ever. So, also, wait, somebody said something about the Harvey Hall of Fame, Eternity, and I don't know what you're talking about.
I think you say Misako.
Oh, Misako Rocks? Really? That's really cool. Well, I'll have to do some digging. I don't want to say it out loud. I'm not sure what he's talking about. So, all right, guys, that's it for us. Thank you so much to my co-hosts. Love you to bits. The Maker Willing will be here next week with more expert cartooning goodness. Guys, I would be remiss if we didn't get out of this cold, dark night without washing those curvy hands. All right, guys, have a great week.